Boards of Canada are one of my favourite bands of all time, certainly my favourite Scottish band, an IDM/experimental electronic duo composed of brothers Michael Sanderson and Marcus Eoin. A core theme of their central image is, well, mainly not having one. Being mysterious is core to Boards of Canada. They rarely give interviews, take photo shoots, and their music often contains messages that are never explained, some releases being lost to history. To explore the elusive world of Boards of Canada, we have this Reddit user to thank, posting this Iceberg chart to the site. I'm pretty sure you know how an Iceberg chart works, so I'll save you the explanation and we'll begin. Instead of doing one layer at a time, I'm going to split the Iceberg chart entries into 4 categories. The first 2 layers are just songs by the band that are well known by any fan, so I'll skip explaining them, as you can find these songs easily on any streaming platform, as well as explanations, theories, samples, and fun facts about each track on Boc Pages, the unofficial encyclopedia for everything BOC. There is one entry that isn't on either of these layers that I'll go over now, which is Remainder of Studio Album Tracks, which I think just refers to any song that wasn't mentioned above that may be more obscure to people who don't listen to BOC or casual listeners. Now we move on to releases that are generally unavailable, a reoccurring theme of entries on this iceberg. Play by Numbers is a lost 1994 5-track CD by the duo that seems to be very distant from the ambient and electronic sounds of their later releases. The only existing audio from this EP is 56 seconds from the second track, Wouldn't You Like to Be Free, that was posted on the electronic music news website EHX. Hooper Bay is another lost EP from 1994. The only existing audio is again from EHX, this time from the third track, Circle. People have speculated that the album had an Arctic or Alaskan theme, as Hooper Bay is a real town in Alaska, and the title for the third track could be a reference to the Arctic Circle, as well as the song itself sounding like ambience you might hear in a cold climate. In 2023, a fake version of the EP was made by Discogs user going by James Loughton, with many believing that it was real and Hooper Bay had finally been discovered. If you haven't, I would recommend you go and give the fake version a listen. Despite it not being the real thing, it is pretty good and honestly quite convincing. Catalogue 3, dating back to 1987, is BOC's earliest, as far as we know, and definitely most mysterious release. This kind of uninteresting and basic title and cover make it even more elusive, and certainly adds to the intrigue when you consider it has 8 tracks and 56 minutes of total audio, as well as the fact that the title implies there could be 2 more of these released earlier on. Although this isn't proven, it certainly has many fans interested, and that just shows how much of the duo's discography we have no information about. So far, none of Catalogue 3 is available to listen to by the general public, and remains private to those that the duo were close with at the time of its release. The other 2 entries that refer to lost albums/EPs are ones that have been lost in the past but have since been recovered. A Few Old Tunes and Old Tunes Vol.1 are a pair of lengthy compilations made in 1996 of a variety of early songs. Although initially released on cassette, like some other of the lost releases, these compilations leaked pretty easily onto predominantly music-related file-sharing network SoulSeek, as well as other sites, and can now be simply found in many places online and listened to in their entirety. Boc Maxima is another compilation, initially private with only 50 copies made to cassette. It contains previously unreleased songs accompanied by some from their first studio album, Music Has the Right to Children, as well as some tracks from publicly available EPs such as High Scores, and ending with an alternative version of One Very Important Thought. Boc Maxima stayed entirely private until it was broadcasted in its entirety by fellow electronic artists Autechre on the radio show Disengage, before quickly becoming available on the internet. The entries GAN, Flutes, Time Apple and 747 all refer to snippets of BOC tracks that would play over animated visuals that could be found on their old website in the early 2000s. While mostly being short experimental pieces of music, some of these snippets came from early recordings of songs that would go on to appear on their second album Geogaddi, released in 2002, likely making these web loops the first time many fans would hear pieces of the album. From this point onwards, I'll explain miscellaneous entries from the chart that don't belong to any specific category. The Societas X Tape is a mixtape put together by the duo for Warp Records' 30th anniversary in 2019 that can be listened to in length on YouTube. While some songs are by Boards of Canada, most of the songs featured on the tape are from other artists and bands. I wasn't familiar with this when I first listened to it, making me a bit surprised to hear a song featuring guitars and vocals after the fitting electronic intro that kicks off the mixtape. Macquarie Ridge is a bonus track that appears on the Japanese edition of the Campfire head phase, fitting in quite well with the album as it feels and sounds a lot like Day Van Cowboy. The name comes from a boundary between the Pacific and Australian tectonic plates that run across southern New Zealand. Orange Romeda refers to a track by BOC that was selected to be included on We Are the Reasonable People, a compilation album created by Warp Records in June 1998 that included entries from various IDM/electronic artists and groups that created music for the label, including Squarepusher, Aphex Twin and Autechre. The Peel Session was a BBC Radio 1 show hosted by DJ John Peel that ran from 1967 to 2004, where artists and bands would be interviewed and would record both pre-existing and new material that would be played on air. On the 21st of July 1998, Boards of Canada would appear on the programme, resulting in the only time that the duo have ever done an audible interview, and the only available clip of their real voices.
Gone well for you, has it?
It certainly has, yeah.
Right, so what are you going to do now? Back to your secret lair to do more tunes?
We're off to the pub, actually. So.
Right, okay. Oh, so you're not completely sort of aesthetic then?
No, not totally. No, not at all.
The tracks in particular being mainly alternative versions of those found on Music Has the Right to Children, released in the same year, but a new recording, XYZ, was made for the session, which is the longest in their discography and probably my favourite BOC track. The recordings from the Peel session were released in 1999 on CD and vinyl, and later released digitally in 2019 for Warp Records' 30th birthday. From one source, All Things Depend is a bonus track on the Japanese release of Geogaddi that consists of children talking about God, which definitely contrasts the album's obviously satanic themes. BOC Remixes either refers to the remixes of BOC songs that other artists have created, or tracks from other artists that BOC have remixed. The most recent group that the duo have remixed for quite predominantly is Nevermen, remixing two songs, Mr. Mistake and Treat 'Em Right, in 2016 and 2021 respectively. I wouldn't say they're essential listening for most fans, but they are interesting to hear, and they give an insight as to how their music has progressed in the last 10 years. Christ, or maybe Christ, is the name that former BOC member and ambient artist Christopher Horn now goes under. Horn was part of Boards of Canada until his departure in around 1996, probably being most significant for playing a role in writing music for the Tourism album released a year prior, his name appearing on the original pressing but not the 2002 reissue. He has since released 9 albums and 4 EPs under the pseudonym. Quiet is an advert for Italian mobile telecommunications company Telecom Italia, featuring Leonardo DiCaprio, and music recorded by Boards of Canada specifically made for the ad. The brothers have since seemed to show discontent with the ad, given around 30 minutes of audio was made for it out of respect for director Chris Cunningham, with only a 20-second snippet being used, as well as the minimal amount of effort contributed by DiCaprio and how much he was probably paid for starring in the ad compared to the duo's likely hours of work producing accompanying audio for it. It is, however, pretty relaxing once the music is combined with images of nature, something which seems to endlessly be associated with BOC. Spiro refers to an unreleased song only made available because it was played as part of BOC's live set at the Warp Lighthouse Party in 2000, an event that saw performances from other artists under the Warp Records label at Trinity Boy Wharf. Spiro is the only track from this set which remains unreleased to this day, but thankfully recordings made it available online. Soylent Night is a track released on Wine and Missing Toe, a Christmas compilation album by VVM Test Records, a label run by Leyland Kirby, who would go on to produce ambient music under the name The Caretaker. This is one instance of the duo releasing music under their alias Hell interface, which is used for pieces of music which are more unconventional to their usual genre, and this song is definitely unconventional. While their music can certainly be eerie, Soylent Night is fully nightmarish. Here Come the Rubber Cops is a 2008 song released by the Sexual Objects that was produced by Boards of Canada. Very recently, in September 2025, the band released Orangutan, an album in which BOC once again partnered with them to produce 3 songs including Here Come the Rubber Cops, with Michael Sanderson co-writing 1 track. The Story of Xentrix is another track released under the alias Hell interface in 2003, composed of a robotic voice speaking aloud. Geogaddi test pressing refers to an early vinyl copy of Geogaddi pressed in February 2002. Limited to only 10 copies and in blue, it contains the last 2 sides of the album, complete with the etching of a family seen on the regular edition's side F, where it's etched onto the grooveless plastic in the place of the album's final track, Magic Window. This is different from the promo LP that was given out at listening parties a month earlier, containing only 2 songs on side 1 and, once again, Magic Window on the opposite side, complete with a turquoise hexagon as the centre label. I want both of these so bad. Roygbiv Alphaquest mix can refer to the special version of Roygbiv that the duo made for a student film. Presumably going without the intent to ever be released, the Alphaquest mix did eventually make its way onto the internet from its original release on digital audio tape. This version is quite a bit longer than the regular version of Roygbiv, but a significant portion of it is taken up by a longer and more distorted version of Boc Humor, another track from the same album at the start. The availability of this mix is great, as I'm sure a lot of fans would love to hear a longer version of what is a favourite track by many, but let down by its length. The Random 35 Tracks tape is definitely the most interesting and mysterious piece of BOC history. Leaked spontaneously by an unknown source in 2004, this compilation contains 35 tracks, obviously, some known and never heard before. As there's no titles given to any of the songs, so most of them are a mystery, despite some that are appearing on the tape that are from official, available releases, mostly parts of tracks from Music Has the Right to Children and Geogaddi, with a couple of tracks from a few old tunes mixed in. Some of the unheard tracks might be from the lost albums that I mentioned earlier, or not. There's really no way of knowing. Eoin's Campfire mixtape is a mixtape of all sorts of songs from other artists created by Eoin in 2005, published in the pop culture-centred magazine Dazed and Confused. Given the title and year of release, the mixtape was likely part of the promotional cycle for their 2005 album The Campfire Headphase. Each track listing contains a small piece of commentary, most of them connecting each song to themes of campfires, nature and autumnal vibes. AtlantaFugiens, or Fugiens, just refers to a username of a YouTube channel that uploaded a version of Julian Candy from Geogaddi, along with trippy visuals. These are actually the exact alternative version of the song and visuals used when it was played at the All Tomorrow's Parties Festival in 2001 in Canberra Sands. During this live set, the duo would also play Sunshine Recorder, allowing audience to listen to tracks from Geogaddi for the first time since the Warp Lighthouse party a year prior. Red Moon Incident is probably also the most interesting and bizarre thing on this list, and refers to the brothers mentioning several times in interviews of parties or gatherings in the woods, or just in nature in general, that they refer to as Red Moon Nights. According to a 2005 Japanese interview titled In an Imaginary Place Out in the Country, one of these events took place in a seemingly ruined 16th century monastery, in which they'd light a bonfire and get apparently up to 100 people to accumulate and become guarded by nature. In 2005, this mysterious image appeared on the BOC website, of a red moon with this code written over it. 100606, some people theorise, could be intentionally referring to the date 10th of June 2006, where perhaps one of these practices did take place, or at least was planning to take place. Honestly, the Red Moon Incident is a giant rabbit hole of hidden messages, photos and MP3 recordings that span across multiple Boards of Canada forums that now seem to be unavailable. If you're particularly interested in this weird piece of history regarding the duo, then there's far more info to uncover. Wheeltower is supposedly the name that BOC went by back in the early days when they were a trio. There's still very little actual confirmation of this, however, as it comes from a Reddit thread claiming to be friends with the group, with very little verification, but it's certainly possible that this could be true. OVERFLOW Man is a message included around the rim of the Tomorrow's Harvest's CD release. It's an anagram of Owl of Minerva, a Greek symbol of wisdom. It could also refer to a quote by German philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel from his book Elements of the Philosophy of Right. The owl of Minerva spreads its wings only with the falling of dusk, possibly a connection to the album's apocalyptic themes. I could find very little information about Sandrail. It's apparently an obscure track by the duo uploaded in 2011 to their Last FM page. The creator of this Iceberg attached a link to a YouTube upload of the song, but it seems to be unavailable. Cichli, Boards of Canada cover, refers to a BOC cover of the Autechre song Cichli. It goes unreleased to this day and basically remains unconfirmed in terms of its existence, but it's highly likely that it's out there somewhere, as both members of Autechre have stated that they have a copy of the cover, as well as copies of old Tunes Vol.1 and 2. Boc Remii Vol.1 is an extremely obscure compilation album that appears to contain mostly songs from various IDM and electronic artists remixed by the duo. Until recently, the only evidence of its existence was a listing on Discogs, stirring up some discussion of its legitimacy within the community. Turns out the album was a bootleg, although these remixes are genuine, and in February 2025, a YouTube user by the name of Dope Nickname uploaded a recreation of the compilation featuring each track in order. And finally, Woice 099 refers to a listing of one of the duo's registered works within the ISWC, or International Music Standard Work Code, under the name of Boards of Canada. It remains completely unknown what the contents of this track are, unlike the other entries in this database, which have been identified as previously existing BOC tracks. Now that the show is over, I would love to thank this Reddit user with an impossible to pronounce username for creating the Iceberg chart used for this video, and providing explanations for some of the more obscure entries. I'd also like to thank Boc Pages for providing some much needed information also. Hope you've enjoyed watching.